this is Chrissy, and I'm Paul. And you all right?
Yeah, I'm good.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Um, we're sitting right now at Lyman Loaf, which is our kitchen store just south of Nashville. And in 2017, we opened a restaurant called the Dotted Lime, and then just recently we opened a restaurant called the Cranky Yankee. I think we're going to start by just telling you a little bit about our story, our journey, and why we chose to open a restaurant south of Nashville in 2017. And we're going to go on from there, talk about some of our challenges throughout the years and where we're at now. So um, why don't you get started?
Let's see. Paul and I met in culinary school in 1994.
Shh. That was a
Oh,
long time
it was
ago.
a long time ago. Um, but he was a third year apprentice and I was first, and we met and got married and started moving around the country, sort of following his career and taking the next job as one does. Um, During that time, just to add some interesting history, um, when I first met Paul's family, his brother had celiac disease, still forever celiac disease, and that was the first time I'd ever heard of gluten or celiac. Had no idea what it was. Had to have it explained to me like a kindergartner, but was intrigued by the whole process. Fast forward several years, my fourth pregnancy triggered what they thought was just a postpartum depression. Turns out that it was the gluten. Um, so I had to take, some had to take some additional steps to start kind of breaking down some recipes of some things because all of the products that were out there were just horrible. I like to say everything tasted like sandy cardboard. Um, and I don't feel like that's really much of an exaggeration. But that process of me sort of, having to change my diet and my lifestyle around that sort of sparked that interest in me. And then as we, moved around some more and wound up back in Tennessee, Paul was working for um, Compass,
Compass Group.
Compass Group,
Yep.
and was traveling a lot. He was gone, 200 nights a year in a
Yeah.
hotel. Sometimes it felt like more than that. But, we kept saying, when are we going to do something for ourselves? And originally we were going to open the Dotted Lime as just sort of a way to market our catering business. But before we actually opened, we had an argument back and forth about whether or not it was going to be 100% gluten free or if it was going to be, just have some really good gluten free options. And I just really kept pushing for not having the gluten in the building, just because I kept getting sick everywhere we would go. It just seemed like nobody could control their cross contact with their ingredients. So we decided to open it up as gluten free. Then we added peanut and tree nut free as well before we opened, due to a friend of ours' child having a really severe reaction at a restaurant and having to get rushed to the emergency room. So we are constantly trying to
Yeah.
change and improve and make that like 1% better here and there. We have eliminated almost all the corn from the recipes. We've just done a lot of eliminating of ingredients over the years just to try to make our food accessible for more people.
So that brings us to now, almost 4.5 years after we opened the restaurant, after we made the scary jump from a steady employment to working for ourselves in the entrepreneurship, and put us in this place of growth and opportunity to be what we believe are really great contributors to our society, to our community. And so when Chef Ford asked us to be a part of this and talk a little bit about our products and how we have worked through challenges of opening a business on a shoestring budget and growing the business, and then surviving through COVID, and even now as we face challenges with our current restaurant location having to move. We're going to go into a little bit more of that as we go through our conversation today. But then, how did we create products? You want to just show them a little bit about which?
Well, and I'd like to preface this slightly as well. I know I had mentioned it in some of the marketing ahead of time. I absolutely agree with you in most gluten free just being horrendous, like awful. Pretty much all the same texture, extremely expensive, just really poor experience all in all. And one of the coolest things that I love whenever I come in or when I've been is that everything that you produce is delicious first, and then just so happens to be gluten free. The brownie that I had there was amazing and fudgy and ridiculously delicious and gluten free. The flatbread, same thing. The biscuit, and these aren't common things. So as you're getting into that, I want to make sure that everybody understands that my perspective here as you're talking about these products is that the biscuits are so good that it could rival most any biscuit regardless of what's in it. So that's the standard that we're talking about. I'll shut up
Right, and
now.
that was always our goal was when we went to open the restaurant. Was I remember Paul just saying, "Fine, we'll be 100% gluten free as long as no one can tell." And I was like, okay, so that's where the bar is set. So, for us, it's kind of a cool combination because I cannot eat gluten, and it's been so long. Like the child that caused all of this is almost 19 years old. So we've been doing this, I like to say, for way since before it was cool. And for me, I've lost, a lot of that perception of knowing, does something taste gluten free? Does it have that texture? Does it have that sort of characteristic grittiness or gumminess? I can usually tell those things, but like there's products out there, gluten free products, especially, that have like that weird aftertaste. And I think sometimes I just get a little oversensitive to that kind of stuff. And so thankfully we have, Paul that can eat everything and, is a very accomplished chef and does, judging and all of that. So, I'm able to take something to him and say, what do you think? And he'll either hand it back or take one bite and throw it away.
Well, and
Or,
that's kind of how the biscuits were developed as
yeah.
well. Is when we started the restaurant, and really the goal was we're going to open a fully 100% gluten free restaurant in Columbia, Tennessee, which is roughly 50 miles south of Nashville. So really small town. It was 2017. I think the trendiest restaurant in Columbia at the time was,
There were no trendy restaurants in Columbia.
well, like Hardee's maybe. Like
We have like,
we
there's
just,
nothing here. I
yeah.
mean, it's
So
mostly family owned places,
yeah,
but
but everything was very low cost country cooking. And when I say that, I mean um, out of a box into the oven onto the plate. Nothing was prepared fresh. Nothing was prepared with love, with intentionality. Everything was just the simplest that it could be. Add water to gravy mix, and that was all the restaurants around us. And it's grown in the past 4.5, 5 years. But if we were going to open a gluten-free restaurant in the middle of a town like this, it needed to be something that nobody could compare it to. So we started with a flatbread, just a 9-inch round flatbread that Chrissy made. And I remember the night we were testing it in the house, and we couldn't call it naan bread. We couldn't call it um, pita bread, and it
yeah.
had the similar features to all of those breads, but we couldn't use those because it gave somebody the idea to compare it to.
Like
And
a
so,
preconceived
right,
notion of
what
what it
is
was going
pita
to
bread
taste like
supposed to
before
be
they
like,
tried it.
right? So, so we came up with a name for this flatbread, and we called it a panzino. And I remember telling the kids that, 10 years from now, Panzino is going to be listed on Wikipedia, and it's going to be like this cool new thing. And so we created an item to combat that idea, and that's what we started with. Everything was served on a Panzino. We used it as a wrap in place of a tortilla. We use it as a pizza crust. We use it for toast for breakfast. And then Chrissy really, really, really wanted to create biscuits.
I grew up eating biscuits. Like I'm from here, and the first summer morning when we would stay at my grandmother's house, we would stay with my grandparents over the summer. And the first morning when I would wake up at my grandmother's house during the summer, she would always biscuits and chocolate gravy every time. It was the first day that we would wake up at her house. And I just had all of these memories wrapped up around this kind of traditional Southern, bread, and really wanted to be able to have really good biscuits on our menu. And
so the R&D started.
the R&D was rough. It was really hard. We had a lot of breadcrumbs to use up.
So this is one of the biscuits that Chrissy made.
I don't know if they can see that.
I think they can, kind of.
But
But I think we went through 10 different renditions of that before we finally.
That's probably the ones that you saw.
Okay.
So more than that.
She presented 10 different renditions to me before we said yes. There's no sandiness, there's no grittiness, there's a good texture to it. This will, hold up. It won't turn to mush. It's not gummy, and it can be prepared consistently, which was also another, thought is sometimes something works out once and then it's really hard to replicate. And so that was kind of our R&D process, and that was kind of how we created the Dotted Lime, being our initial restaurant. And the Dotted Lime quickly, 5 years after opening, quickly has become a destination spot for people with food allergies. And so without a doubt, people with food allergies will travel hours and hours to come to the restaurant and spend a night or two in Columbia, Tennessee, and enjoy our food and our desserts. And Chrissy primarily focuses on the bakery items and the sweet treats and creating delicious desserts for people. She makes some incredible cakes. I don't know. You can kind of see one back behind her shoulder there that she made. That's a dummy cake that we used for display, but she's done amazing work with gluten-free cakes, being able to cater to all of those allergies. So it's been fun to be able to create that in a spot that nobody would have chosen to create the Dotted Line. If somebody somewhere said, let's make a gluten-free, peanut, tree nut-free, super allergen friendly restaurant, nobody would have picked Columbia,
They'd
Tennessee.
Been like Portland.
Or yeah,
I don't know, maybe New York.
So it's been a blast to be able to do that and to start to develop our own method of overcoming obstacles and challenges along the way. Because anybody that is watching or is going to be watching later on that owns their own business or has that entrepreneur mindset, there's going to be challenges. There's going to be hard times. There's going to be problems that need to be overcome. And we have, without a doubt, had our share along the way. First one that I'm sure comes to everybody's mind is COVID. Mm-hmm. And we were, just like every other restaurant, we were having a great year. And then COVID hit. And I was preparing for a presentation not too long ago, and I was struggling to come up with the words to describe how we survive differently than some other places in town or even across the country. And Chrissy very eloquently said it's the difference between reacting versus responding. And we have kind of taken that, reflectively, taken that approach to everything else that we're doing. Is when we see a challenge, how do we respond to this rather than how do we react to this? I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about some of the things and the thought process that went through.
For 2020 specifically.
Yeah.
Well, February of 2020, we had just been, kicking around the idea of getting our entire menu online. And for, all of the month of February, I spent every moment that I wasn't actually baking in the restaurant building our online menu for customers to be able to order from their phones. And it was a pain in the rear end. The way that Square is set up to do that is really, really difficult. And so I was working on it, finally got the menu up and running. We started accepting our first few online orders the end of February in 2020. And so, as luck would have it, we just already had that up and running so that people could order from their phones and pick up in the drive-thru. And that was just really a huge blessing that was already done. For about 2 years prior, we had been doing family meals and meal prep for our customer base, and we would post those online, usually the beginning of the week, and people would order and they would swing through the drive-thru or come in and pick those up. So we already had those plans and processes in place for how to put those things up. We already knew, how to package them.
And we created those family meals as a response to the
It was mostly
request.
teachers.
Yeah, we had
our hours were 7 to 3, and that was also their hours. And
so we had teachers and people that worked the same hours that the restaurant was open, asking for us to open for dinner, but we just weren't willing to make that commitment to do 3 meals a day as a small family owned and run business. So we created this family meal platform and program where we would write a menu a week ahead of time and have meals prepared, pre-ordered, prepaid, hot and ready for pickup at 4 o'clock in the afternoon between 4 and 5 p.m. And so people could take these meals and bring them home and have a nice hot meal prepared by the Dotted Line. Quick and easy, wholesome foods.
We tried to keep the cost really attainable for most people. It was, half or a full. And we just had really great feedback from those all the time. And so that was already in place. So it was really just ramping up the things that we were already doing and, doing what we could as far as the restaurant was concerned. The reaction response thing is from a quotation I heard a long time ago that was when a doctor says that you've reacted to a medication, it's a bad thing. But when you've responded to a medication or a treatment, that's a good thing. And so that was kind of, what has stuck in my head all of these years was, that you want to respond to a situation instead of react. And so my knee-jerk reaction for all of the things that was happening during 2020 was very dramatic, as most of the time my reactions are. And, I was, woe is me, and, the sky's falling, it's going to be terrible, and then after I, get all of that out, we're like, okay, but really, what are we going to do? And, we just ramped all of that up, and we couldn't have customers in the dining room. So we had a walk-up window that we had covered by a curtain. Our building used to be like a ice cream shop. And we had just had this window covered up by a curtain ever since we'd been open. And so we just pulled the curtain down and moved a speed rack over there and started taking orders through the window.
We also took the opportunity. The setup within the dining area of the restaurant was not as efficient as it certainly should have been. And so we took the opportunity while we had the mandatory shutdown to renovate and move the front door to the side of the building, creating better customer flow and workflow to create some more efficiencies. And so, post COVID, our traffic increased dramatically just by the way we were able to maneuver the flow of traffic and the way our employees worked through things.
Yeah, we were able to seat a few more people in there, and just change some things around to make it a lot more efficient. Then we started having, people were hearing about hospitality industry workers who were out of work because their restaurants closed or they had to close, and they couldn't pivot, so to speak, and they were just out of work. And so people started contacting us and saying, how can I help? Do any of your people need help? And we're like, no, we're busy. So, but there were a lot of people out there that were not. And so we,
well, that was also the same time that all the restaurants were trying to pre-sell gift cards.
Right. Everybody was trying to sell gift cards. And, for us, that seemed really scary.
It's just creating more liability.
For an uncertain business model or uncertain business in particular. And so for us, we were like, well, do we really want like $10,000 worth of unpaid or unredeemed gift cards floating around out there for, the worst possible day for all of these people to come in and decide to get their free food? So it just, for us, that didn't seem like the best situation. So we created the
buy them a meal,
the
86th
list. So people could add $10 on to their order at checkout, and it would go in as an item for the 86th list. And we just pooled money and sent out gift certificates to
provided about $20,000 in gift cards and meals to out of work hospitality employees, and provided I think about 500 meals to the local elementary schools with families in need at the local elementary schools. So it was a really great opportunity. It was a lot of fun to be in the middle of that nationwide crisis and be so equipped at the time to also be able to give back.
And respond in such a profound way.
Yeah, it was really fun. And, our youngest was at a school here in town that was the oldest elementary school in town. It was also the most diverse. And in being the most diverse school in the county, they also had free meals, breakfast and lunch for all students every day. And it was a subsidized program. And so they were doing some, meals to go for the kids, and like backpack meals, and you could drive through and you could pick up food. But the problem is that some of the families couldn't get to the school. So the teachers and what do you call those people? Counselors and people, employees at the school would contact us and say, I need food for a family of 6, or I need, food for a family of 4. And, is it okay if I come by in a little bit? And we would box up a whole bunch of stuff. And it was really pretty cool to see that people were coming by, and, that the school workers were able to go by and check on these kids in person and take them food. And we were able to provide it because of everybody's donations. So.
Yeah, I think just in the history of the restaurant, I think one of the other really cool challenges that we responded to was opening a gluten-free restaurant. Comes the challenge of supply chain. Where do we get the flours? And we found a really great company out of California that had some very good flour blends. But within those flour blends, one came the huge expense of shipping it from California. 2 was the labels. The ingredients were not exactly what we wanted. We found by opening up a restaurant that catered to people with food allergies that there are a ton of corn allergies as well, something that was just not on our radar. and all of the gluten-free mixes that we had used and that we had tested our products with contained corn.
Some had soy.
Many of them had soy and
Or they would have like a may contain label.
milk powder.
Milk powder. Yeah.
So one of the things that Chrissy started doing was to create her own blend of flour mixes to reduce the cost of the product that we were getting from California, but also to make it so that it was a label that we were proud of. And so over the course of really only 6 months, I think you developed the flour mixes that we're using now, and that challenge and the response to that challenge has now stemmed a whole new revenue stream for our organization in the different baking mixes that we have. And I think we have 13 different SKUs of mixes. And I think Chef, the all access pass. I think the folks that are part of the all access pass are going to get some of the mixes. So that was the pancake and waffle mix. She has a biscuit mix, a bread mix, cookie mix, all kinds of really great mixes that were created kind of out of a challenge that was presented to us, and how we moved that to a favorable challenge.
Well, can you touch? I know. I mean, I don't want to derail your conversation at all, but can you touch on why there are specifically different mixes? And this is something that I guess I wouldn't have thought about, especially not having come up learning or understanding gluten-free products. So I'd love to hear your conversation on that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because when I'm online and I'm in some Facebook groups or whatever for pastry chefs and bakeries, and somebody will post on there about once a month and they'll say, I have a customer that wants me to make them a gluten-free cake or cupcake, whatever it is. And inevitably somebody will respond and say, just get the Bob's Red Mill blue bag and substitute it in your regular recipe 1-to-1. It'll be fine. And every time I'm like, do not engage strangers on the internet. But it's just never good. You can't do that. It doesn't work. It's marginally okay. Here's the problem is that what I've noticed over the years with gluten-free baking in particular is that the bar is set so low that it's like, is it gluten-free? Can you eat it? That's the bar. It's that low. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to look pretty. It doesn't have to have, a nice Maillard browning on it. It doesn't have to have, fluffy layers. It doesn't have to have anything favorable. It just literally has to only be gluten-free and be edible. And that is where a lot of, restaurateurs and bakeries that don't focus on this type of thing, that's where they set the bar. And so for them, yeah, absolutely. Just they're going to swap out, a gluten-free all-purpose flour in their regular recipe, and it's going to be acceptable. So for us, we set our bar a lot higher, and I didn't want anybody to be able to tell that it was gluten-free. And so the reason why we have different mixes is because I will adjust the protein content or the starch content based on what I'm making. So, for instance, the all-purpose flour does not have any gums in it. It's all-purpose in that you can use it to make a gravy. You can use it to bread chicken, to fry it. You can use it to, I don't know what all you use the all-purpose for. But the savory people use the all-purpose, and do all of their normal flour-based thingies with AP. So.
And I think also a similar comparison would be in traditional baking. You have all-purpose flour, you have cake flour, you have bread flour, you have high gluten flour. And so, even in traditional baking, there's different flours that are used for different things. And basically what Chrissy has done is created those different flours for different things, but given them a name that more closely meets their application.
Right. So like we have a bread mix, which is exactly what I use to make the bread. And so I actually have some dough sitting here, but the bread mix will create a dough that you can actually knead and shape, which for gluten free is kind of the holy grail of gluten free baking, because normally that's not a thing. you know,
Can you tear that roll in half? I'd love to show
I
everybody the
can't. I don't
crumb
know.
that's
Can you
in there.
guys see this at all? I'm not sure. Are
Yeah, a little bit.
you able to see that?
Get closer.
Wait, you want me to like lean over the
Yeah,
table?
lean over the table.
It's pretty good.
Okay, how about this? I can't see the screen.
It's
Can you see it
close.
better?
Nah, no, it's not focusing.
Okay.
But I
Not
could
focusing.
see
All
when
right.
you were pulling it, the air bubbles and the.
Yeah, so it's got.
But even like listen to to the
Yeah, you can
to the
hear. You can put it
crust
from the
on,
microphone.
like that just has to sound great.
It sounds like bread. That actually, I wish I had recorded
It's
that sound
actual
effect.
bread.
You're
Yeah,
right.
it's actual bread, and it's we. I worked really hard on this bread. Like I really wanted it to be indistinguishable from real bread.
Well, and to that point, and I think you, chef, may have mentioned this in one of your promotion for this event. Is Chrissy recently passed her certified executive pastry chef exam, and did it with 100% gluten-free products.
I made this bread.
So this was a similar bread basket that she made as part of that practical exam. So for the proctors of the exam to be able to look at her and say, "This is not just good gluten-free bread. This is good bread," is pretty amazing. And the same with the cakes and the chocolate work and the plated desserts. There's just the level that Chrissy has put into creating these products and the mixes. It's just it's really unparalleled. Which I believe this and these mixes to be a market shifting product. I believe them to be a product that is going to take all the other gluten free products out there and have them reevaluate how they're doing it and why they're doing it and who they're doing it for. And
Raise the bar a little bit.
yeah,
So, I mean, you can even tell just by photos that are out there on the internet of, the mixes that are for sale. They'll show a product, a photo of their product, and I'm like, oh, that looks really dry, and not that they're doing anything wrong. Like I said, the bar is just set really low. So if they're even slightly above the bar, then, they're ahead of the game. But, our bar was just set in a different location. So, you know, um, I hate when people say it's really good for gluten free. Like that's like people come into the restaurant and they'll be like, "Whoa, this is really good for gluten free," and I'm like, "Wash your mouth out with soap." But it's
It's
like
really good.
it makes
Period.
me so frustrated.
yeah.
Yeah, and like that was
Well,
probably
and
the biggest compliment for me when the biscuits
yeah,
we
so
did
we
the slider
did we
thing.
did a local competition in 2019, summer of 2019, and Sean Brock was one of the judges, and we served a slider on one of Chrissy's biscuits, and his remark on stage was, "This is not just a good gluten free biscuit. This is a good biscuit." He's like, "This is amazing. It blows my mind." That you were able to get this texture out of a gluten free product. And so I think that level of commitment and the back and forth that we're able to have, me, being able to go out and eat a biscuit, best biscuit in Nashville, I can go have it, and compare Chrissy's test biscuits to the texture and the feel and what that feels like, to be able to get to the best biscuit in Tennessee.
Yeah, and
So what are
I don't
some?
always love it. Just to let you know, I don't love I don't love that feedback process. So
Well, that's what I wanted to ask is how do you make that work, right? I mean, feedback on that level is never easy. And that's definitely one of those conversations with your husband and wife team. How do you have that critical feedback, because you don't have a great product without great feedback, and
Right.
still continue to work together?
Well, the bakery's no longer inside the restaurant. So
we we moved the bakery out of the restaurant,
there's
so I don't
another
know.
location.
But we are trying to move the bakery back into the
Right,
restaurant.
because we do realize we lost something. We lost some of the soul of the restaurant when me and the bakery people left. It changed a lot. Um, but
You know, I think part of it is also the I was coming up in the culinary field. I was an avid competitor in culinary competitions, and so I've received like feedback, like crazy feedback, and crushed and go back and recreate what I was trying to recreate and do it better, and go back to the grindstone. And through that process, I was also able to get to the point where I've earned my right to judge ACF competitions, and through that process was coached along the way on how to provide feedback that focuses on growth and development rather than just getting my words and my feelings out onto the plate. And I hope that through the process that Chrissy and I go through, I've been able to use some of that to kind of soften the blow and not say, no, this is a horrible biscuit. It's sandy, it's gritty, and it crumbles. Find a better way to say those words, so she's motivated to go back and try again. And
and not kill you in your sleep.
yes, and I'm sure that there's been times um, where she's wanted to kill me in my sleep.
Yeah, it was really hard there for a while because we for gosh, I don't know, all of the years I was staying at home with the kids, and they were my only
Feedback,
feedback on
and they'd
anything that I
eat
did.
anything
And
you
they
put
were
in front.
like, yeah, great, love it, and they would eat it all. And so, I didn't have any legitimate feedback, and I didn't have any reason to ask anybody. I was cooking for me and the kids. And if Paul wanted some, great. And if he didn't, I'm sure he would make something better for himself. So, there wasn't that feedback process in place. And I had not grown my skills over the years in competition. I had not gone and been judged by people in tall hats and like hearing their feedback. Like, that was not a part of my process at all. And so when we opened the restaurant, and it became like Paul would come back and say, what's going on with these muffins? And I'm like, look, I don't want to talk about the muffins. There was a thing, there was like a day, it was a day. And he's like, that doesn't tell me what happened with the muffins. And it was just hard. It was really hard. And there was just a lot of growth that had to happen, I think, between the two of us, just
Well, and
as in our marriage, even because like he was always gone and traveling, and work was work and home was home. And so there wasn't ever that kind of crossed
yeah,
lines of, I'm going to put my husband hat on and take off my chef hat right now. Now it's kind of like it's all meshed together.
yeah.
But
Well, and there's also a lot of conversation that happens between Chrissy and I of, listen, we might disagree on this, or we might be both feeling stress from different sources, but we have the same goal, which is to maintain a successful business and grow it where it makes sense, and prune it where it doesn't make sense. And we have to work through that through open conversation. And sometimes it's hard. I mean, any business relationship is hard, and any marriage is hard. But at the end of the day, I think we both understand that you know she's not my enemy, I'm not her enemy, and when we are fighting, we're really actually fighting for the same thing. And that is for the reason that we opened the restaurant, which was, to fill the void in the allergen free community, by serving, some really great food, to people that have food allergies, and also to provide an opportunity for us to invest more time and energy into our family. And so, if we constantly circle back to what's the reason that we're doing this, it's hard not to move towards success, whatever that success is defined by on that given day, or that week, or that month, or the year even. So, is that a good answer to that question?
I think it's a great answer to that question, and it's no that I couldn't have asked for a better answer. It's interesting to think about. We talked about purpose earlier today, right? And if you're purpose driven in your decisions, you make better decisions. At least there's a reason behind it. There's a purpose driving it, and it helps add fuel to your fire, and it helps clear out the unnecessary nonsense, right? And so,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a cool place to come back to. I think, I can speaking from experience from the chef perspective. I think we get kind of detached from chefing at work and then coming home and trying. It's really hard to not be chef at home when you're chef for 14 hours a day, right?
Right.
But then when you transition into an entrepreneurial role with your partner being your wife, your spouse, your husband, whatever that may be, it forces you to evolve in a different direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, for us, like the learning curve was really steep, but I think that this has given us a lot of shared experiences that we wouldn't have necessarily have had with his previous career, being off and experiencing all the things that he was doing on his own. And he'd come home and try to relay those things to me, and it was kind of lost on me because I, don't have any concept of what he's talking about. But now, we have these shared experiences where, like he'll say, did you see, Sam come into the restaurant, and he's, 6 feet tall, and he drove himself, and it's a customer who was 12 years old when we opened the restaurant, and his mom stood there and cried, when she found out that her son could eat anything he wanted that we made. And she was so stressed out because she didn't know how to feed him, and he hadn't been diagnosed celiac that long, and he was losing weight, and he looked malnourished, and now he's 6 feet tall on the baseball team and drives himself to our restaurant. So we get to experience those things together, and it just helps to reiterate our why.
Yeah.
And that's special.
Really. Yeah. So I think, the purpose, I like to use the idea of, intentionality, and going about everything that we do with intentionality. And I think there's a difference between having intentions, but then actually acting on those intentions, and going about what we do with purpose, with intentionality. And I think that intentionality of why we do what we're doing. And, it ties into one of the things that we wanted to share were some of the steps to actually creating a market shifting product, which I believe the dotted line is that. I believe the mixes are that. But I think the first thing, it's very simple. I think dialed down to just 3 simple steps is identifying a problem that we want to solve. So if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a restaurateur, if you're in business, what is that problem that you are uniquely qualified to solve, and that you want to solve or you want to fix?
Just something that you're passionate about.
Yes.
Maybe it has a personal connection.
Sure.
There's a problem,
And
like Vanilla Ice said, I'll solve it. Sorry.
all right.
It's true though.
Yes, it is. And
Thanks,
so,
Chef. Thanks, Chef.
so then the next step would be to propose solutions with intention. is to figure out what are the solutions. So, starting the dotted line, there was this void where Chrissy specifically could eat, and if Chrissy was having a hard time finding a safe place to eat, there had to be many more people. As we found out very quickly, there were. So we intentionally set out to solve that problem. We opened up the restaurant. Step three would be executing the plan. And then through executing that plan is being tied to solving that problem, not the product. And I think that's step three in creating that market shifting product is we were not tied to the product that the dotted line served. We were tied to solving the problem that the dotted line was there for. We were not tied to the first biscuit, right? Mm-hmm. We were tied to creating a biscuit that set the bar so high for any other gluten-free biscuit. So being tied to that problem rather than the product itself is, I believe, what has helped us take products to market and be successful with them.
Well, and it also helps you to identify what is not your problem.
Right.
So people contact us all the time, you know.
Do you do keto? Do you do sugar-free?
Can you do, you know, whatever, grain-free, potato-free is a new one. And, you know, no.
That, and yes, the answer is yes, we could do it. But the problem that we're tied to fixing is the gluten-free, the peanut and tree nut-free, and the corn-free. So that is the problem that we are tied.
Sort of those top 8, and not worrying about, you know, the people. We could create a keto, whatever, but is that where we want to put our effort and energy into being excellent? No. Because I feel like a year from now, 2 years from now, that trend's going to be gone. And, you know, it's going to be something new that everybody's going to focus on. And, you know, for us, this is the gluten-free problem is growing currently. Apparently, people who had COVID, because celiac is an autoimmune condition, it appears as though COVID is actually triggering celiac in a pretty large segment of the population. So we feel like this problem is continuing to get bigger, and it just allows us the opportunity to help people transition from their glutenoid lifestyle over to a gluten-free with less pain and suffering than a lot of us did, trying to do our own research and development at home and trying recipes and failing miserably and feeding them all to your cow.
Yeah.
So,
well, I guess then it would help to have a cow, right?
That's step 1 in your celiac diagnosis is get a cow.
To eat your misfortunes.
Right, exactly. The things even the kids won't eat.
So, you know, you mentioned having intentionality in all things that you do, right? And it's obvious that you do things with intentionality. And I've gotten to know you both very, very well. Paul, definitely I've gotten to know you well. And I know at the core of everything that you do there is intentionality. Can you talk about how that led to the vision that you had and the culture of your restaurants that you built?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think the idea of taking a vision and then creating a culture of excellence. And I'm sure many of the people that are part of this symposium today have read Charlie Trotter's Lessons in Excellence book. I'm sure leadership lessons from a chef. I mean, there's so many really incredible leadership books out there that I know many chefs have read. One of the books that I read long time ago, really simple book, is called Raving Fans. It was written in 1993 And it's a super easy read. But I'm just going to read real quick a paragraph or two from the book, and it says, "Your customers are only satisfied because their expectations are so low, and because no one else is doing better." And I think for anybody that's watching, you have to ask yourself, and I'm sure you have asked yourself uh, many times when you've gone out to a restaurant, how is this place still in business? How can this place be packed on a Tuesday night when everything is subpar? And it's because the vast majority of people's expectations are so low, and that's evident with what Chrissy was saying with the gluten free products.
Right.
The bar is so
So
low
low. Yeah.
that it's not difficult to make people happy with the gluten free product.
Yeah.
And so just having satisfied customers isn't good enough anymore. And I like to replace the word customers with people. And so, yes, we have customers walking in the door, but at the same time, we have employees walking in the door. And I believe the employees are what I like to call internal customers. And so they're my customers. They're the customers that I am working hard to exceed their expectations of who we are as a workplace. And so, if you really want a booming business, you have to create raving fans. And these raving fans, they're not the fair weather fans, where if you lose or if you mess something up, they're out the door. And I think that's one of the challenges that Chrissy has had with embracing the idea of raving fans. Um, because what did you say before this?
Well, I said a lot of times when people are a fan of something, like the terminology, um, when you're a fan of something, you can be turned really quickly. Like, your favorite sports team, you know, doesn't score the points in the sportsing, and then all of a sudden,
The
you're out the
sportsing.
door. You're like, scrape that sticker off my car, and
But
ripping all your patches off your jackets and burning stuff in the parking
but
lot. So
but at the same time, there are fans out there that have Broncos tattoos on their back. There are
right,
fans out there that have the Atlanta Braves, their car painted like the
name their children after
yes.
the coaches, and
So those
yeah,
those are that is how we aim to create that culture of excellence, is to take our vision and to make sure in everything we do with intentionality we are creating raving fans. And that comes in many different ways. That comes with oftentimes just genuinely asking a line cook how they're doing. I think we had recently had a line cook who had a family member um, come down with COVID, and he didn't want to be exposed to it. So we were able to work it out with a local hotel to put him and his brother up in a local hotel for 4 or 5 days, so that he didn't have to go home and be exposed to the opportunity for COVID. And that was a small thing for us to do, but I think that act helps to create a raving fan in that line cook. He is now more of a fan of ours than he was before. And when I can get people to work for us and with us for more than just money, I think that is the idea of creating raving fans. We can when we can mess somebody's food up so extraordinarily
like
awfully,
how in the
right?
world, like no
Like,
one can read.
right.
Like,
It's
how
like,
does this
how did we
happen?
even mess that up?
Right.
But instead of blasting us publicly, they're sending us a private message. That's a raving fan. And that's somebody that wants to see us be successful. And
They're giving us feedback because they want us truly to succeed, not because they just want to be heard out in the public marketplace. And those are our people, and that's kind of the terminology that I use for raving fans. Is these are our people, and
And
for
there's
me, it's like
also
those are the people that they've got our backs no matter what.
right, and I think in doing that, we're not trying to be everything to everybody.
Right.
We know we know the problem that we're trying to solve, and so we know the people who uh, need that problem solved for them. And so we are okay not being everything to everybody. We are also okay. We realize that not everybody can be a Broncos fan. Not everybody can be a Jets fan. Not everybody can be a Patriots fan, right? And so we are okay that there's some people that are just not our fans. And if we lose sleep over that, it starts to erode our culture. And so if we start to realize that somebody that we brought on our team is not our raving fan, it erodes the culture. And so being able to address that and recognize that is also, I believe, a big part of how we take our vision to through intentionality, through creating the culture, not just for our consumers, but also for the people that work with us and for us.
And then, our staff, our team, as well as our customer base, they know that we're not going to allow them to be treated in a way that is contrary to what we've set up as our standard. So our team knows that if we bring somebody on because they interviewed super well in their first, week that they were working with us, everything was, fantastic and rainbows and unicorns. And then all of the sudden they make some sort of 180 shift and they turn into a miserable human to be around, then, you know, our team now feels trapped and they're like, oh no, now my, workplace that I love and I can't wait to get there every day and I don't mind, doing my job for 10 hours. Now it's been infiltrated with this, negative person who just brings the energy down in the room. And they know that we're going to handle that, in the best way that we know how. And I think that builds morale as well. And from our customer standpoint, there's been once or twice that a customer has treated our staff inappropriately, and we dealt with that really swiftly and in a funny way. And, we made sure that, they know that we've got their backs.
Yeah.
So,
That makes perfect sense. And
yeah.
do you want to elaborate on the on that funny way? I'm kind of curious. If you don't want to, I can totally understand. I get it. I can understand if you don't, but I know I'm not the only person that's curious.
So there may be a time where a lady was really rude to one of our waitresses, and
Foul language,
oh yeah,
just horrible person,
and
unloading on this itty bitty girl that was working for us.
she may have requested compensation for her experience, and I may have given her a Ruby Tuesdays gift card and asked her um, to spend her time there rather than at the dotted line.
But you can not confirm that this occurred. It
It's
may
out
have
there.
happened.
There were
You can
witnesses.
Google the scenario. Police would tell you it's true. So,
Um,
Oh goodness.
yeah. But it's funny now. And then, bad review turns into a t-shirt or a button or something like that, and our customers
we
love that.
we had somebody do a 1-star review on Yelp, and
It's like our first one-star review.
yeah, very soon after we opened, it was a 1-star review, and I, your first 1-star review when you've been working so hard for months and months and months is rather deflating to the entire team, and so. Um, Chrissy decided to turn the 1-star review into a T-shirt, and I think it was our highest selling T-shirt of all time.
Yeah.
So,
It says, newfangled chairs and house-made sodas. I hated it. Beth from Yelp.
so, yep. So
And we keep
there's
getting
that.
requests to reprint those.
So we just we choose sometimes to for the morale of our team, we will often choose to handle things a little differently than the mainstream would recommend.
Things, I think if you can turn something around and make it funny, or at least make it an inside joke with your team, it does build morale. And like, we have phrases in the bakery that we use that are, kind of a dig at something ridiculous that has happened, or, it just kind of, it just helps to solidify people together a little bit more because you have shared experiences, and sometimes that might be shared trauma, but it's still a shared experience.
So I think as we close out and get ready for if there's any questions or if you have questions that you think anybody would benefit from, I think um, the things that I believe people should walk away from what Chrissy and I do, maybe thinking about is um, looking for that problem that you can solve and being committed to solving that problem, less about being committed to the product, because the product can go through many different iterations. The dotted line is vastly different today than it was on August 3rd, 2017.
Absolutely.
But we are still committed to addressing the problem of providing allergen-free food for consumers out there. I would love for people to really get on board with the raving fans idea. In our industry, it's a lot about hospitality. It's a lot about service, and not as much about um, pouring into the people and creating fans out of them. It's about I hear so much conversation about the employment crisis right now, and we have our challenges, but we're also very, very blessed to have so many great people working for us with great attitudes. And I believe that one of those reasons is because we go about our day with intentionality, and we look to create raving fans out of everybody that walks through our doors, whether it be the back employee entrance or the front door where the customers walk in. And so if people can hear anything from what we're saying is, I think, go out there and look to solve a problem, be tied to the problem and not the product, and then be super, super focused on creating fans around you, and pouring into those fans on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. And put some good gluten-free stuff on your menu.
Good gluten-free stuff on your menu.
Yeah, not a naked chicken breast, not a naked chicken breast that you don't.
Can you not say naked?
Not an unseasoned chicken breast.
Get a dotted line biscuit or something like that.
But I can't even tell you how many times we've gone out to dinner and had like really ridiculous conversations with the server or the kitchen staff because they just don't know. It's like, educate your people so that they can answer questions intelligently and build confidence in your guests.
Yep. Chef, are there any questions or anything else you thought would be important to hear from us about?
Well, I definitely have a few.
Okay.
First, can you translate naked for me? What is that?
I like to say that the difference between naked and naked is intent.
Yes, ma'am. Moving on. Moving forward very quickly. What?
Gerald uncomfortable.
No, not at all. I'm just I'm trying to move on before I have to bite my tongue.
Okay, go ahead.
No, it's chef at heart. Chef at heart. Yeah.
Yes. Let's move on.
So you earlier on you talked about that jump from a stable full-time job to entrepreneurship, right? Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, what, how you really, sorry,
I'm not good
how
at
you,
technology.
what helped you transition from one role to the other? What carried you through that transition?
So there was this step in the process because it was probably a year or 2 years that Chrissy and I had talked about what's the exit plan from this job, because I could have stayed in that role and grown with Compass Group for the rest of my career, and we certainly would have been happy and healthy. But there was an opportunity that we needed to take, and we needed to realize that it was more important to invest into my family than it was into a long-term career with a big company. And so we had to finally um, make that decision to do that. And so it was probably December 2016. We made the decision that 2017 was going to do that. And what was the book by John Acuff that
Um,
quit?
Quitter.
Quitter. So there's another book that I recommend. It's by John Acuff, who's actually a local writer here in Nashville, and the book is called Quitter. So if there's anybody that's watching that is, on the fence about making a big decision, this is an excellent book
He
to
has a
help you get your mind right.
follow-up book called Start. So
Yep.
they kind of like go
So
hand
Quitter
in
and
hand.
Start by John Acuff, both really good books. But Chrissy read those books, and we just started moving forward, and made the made the decision, and then acted on the decision, and you know um, the rest is kind of history.
Yeah. Well, we just kind of have a tendency to like both kind of like the firstborn, strong-willed child that grew up, and we just sort of
I'm not strong-willed.
we just sort of did a thing. We were like, we're going to do this thing, and everybody's like, when are you going to do the thing? We're like, right this minute. And so we found a building, and I went to a class on how to write a business plan, and then I wrote a business plan, and then you know we were like, do this paperwork. I'm like, I'm going to do the paperwork, and bug the bank people to death for I don't know 2 months, and
Yeah,
started the business. So I mean, it was really just going from we want to do a thing to oh my goodness, we have a restaurant and we just open the doors, and now what do we do?
yeah.
So it happened really fast for us.
Gotcha. Okay, now Chef Chrissy. I was going to say Chef Jensen, but that's not going to get us anywhere right now. So Chrissy, can you talk a little bit about the feedback that you got after completing your CEPC certification? Because I don't know, that for me sounds like an interesting conversation, right? You completely gluten free did your certification.
Yeah. I oh gosh. Well, the evaluators that were there were very kind. They were I was honestly, I couldn't get out of my head the difference between going to a competition and, competing and getting, feedback in that way, and going for certification and being evaluated by proctors. Like to me, it was like I kept mentally preparing that I was going to a competition. And it was, I don't even know, months and months of me going in the middle of the night to redo a dish and to redo a component, and having him taste everything. And, finally went up to Columbus in November, the beginning of November. And thankfully, we had been up to Columbus a couple of other times to do competitions, and they were kind and gave me the same station that I'd worked at the previous 2 times we had been up there. And so, I had a little bit of sense of familiarity, but I, I was nervous, and I would talk to the judges throughout the course of I still say judges, the evaluators, throughout the course of the 4 hours. And they would come over, and look at something that I was doing and ask a question. And, there was one point in time where I had to make a cake, and I was making the Italian meringue buttercream, and I knew that time was not on my side at that point. And I added the butter to the still too warm meringue, but I did it knowing that it would whip up. And so for a minute there, it looked horrific. And a couple of the evaluators would come over and stick their head over and look inside in the bowl and kind of glance at each other like, this is a nightmare. And, I just would kind of like smile and nod, like, it's fine, just wait. I do this, all the time, unfortunately. And so I went to put the cake together, and, one of the evaluators came over and she's like, you make a lot of cakes, huh? And I'm like, yeah, actually. But, I finished, the timer went off, they tasted everything I was cleaning up. They called me over and started, going through each item and, use that phrase like, this is not just good for gluten-free. This cake, I would not know it was gluten-free. This bread, I would never think it was gluten-free. This, hot plated dessert, nothing about this says allergy friendly or, anything like that. And they kept, kind of reiterating those phrases over and over. And one of the evaluators was, I don't know if he works for or works with a company that makes gluten-free baked goods and ships them out to retail establishments and to private individuals all around the country. And, he even said, he was like, this, I'm blown away. This is amazing. It's really good. And so I'm, sitting there all like happy and grinning, and no one said you passed. So
Yes.
nobody said you passed. And so we kind of got to the end, and I'm standing there like, I don't, um, is this a, is this just a really nice critique for a bronze medal, or, like what is the, and then Chef Fernando came over and gave me a hug and said, congratulations. And I was like, oh, that means I passed. So it was pretty crazy for me personally. It was my first time ever experiencing anything like that because I don't have any other levels of certification. This is the only one that I'd ever experienced.
Yeah.
So, but
Well, and I watched from outside of the kitchen, and the kitchen space was, flawless, super organized, very well executed. Everything was on time, and so, there's always that sense from the proctors or the evaluators that when you see a chef that's in control of their station, you almost have that understanding that they know what they're doing. And so Chrissy, without a doubt, they walked away. The proctors certainly walked away, knowing that she did a great job.
well, I know they definitely said, they've proctored some or evaluated some certification practicals before that, everything just seems kind of scrambled and jumbled and chaotic. And, they're like, oh no, they said usually they can tell within about the first 15 minutes if somebody's going to pass or not. And, they just said that they were impressed, with my level of preparedness. And yeah, so I'm ecstatic. Honestly, like Paul and I, that was probably one of our more difficult conversations slash arguments over the years was, me trying to work towards this certification and, him kind of pushing me to figure out why it was that I wanted to do it. And, you know, him saying, it's not like you're going to go out and try to find a better job, like you're still working at the restaurant and you're still the pastry chef here and you're still the baker here. So, what does this mean to you? Why is it that you want this so much? And I desperately wanted to do it 100% gluten-free. When we got there kind of close to the end, I was cutting it really close with this vanilla cake. And I was like ready to petition the ACF to eliminate this particular item from the CEPC practical exam because I was like, this is ridiculous. And my issue was that the guideline states that you have to bake a single cake layer and tort it into thirds and fill it and frost it from that you have to do it that way. And I don't do my cakes that way. With the gluten-free cake batters and the way that things bake up. I need to bake them individually in pans, and then I don't have, as much waste or trimming that has to be done. It just works for me that way. And I probably baked, I don't know how many vanilla cakes I baked. Enough for me to put like toasted cake crumbs in bags for sale. It was really bad. But I kept trying every method imaginable to get to, be able to tort this one cake into layers, and it just wasn't really working. So I don't know. I finally was able to get a cake that I could tort into 3 layers, and actually did the chocolate one as well. So I asked them, this chocolate cake is also being torted, into layers. So, out of just my own stress, will you watch me do that one for the exam portion? And they were like, absolutely, yeah, torting a cake is torting a cake. And so, they
Yeah,
were
that was
just.
how many gallons of cake batter?
I
Do you
don't
think
have any
you?
idea. I mean, it was a lot. It
Yeah,
was a lot. And I
that was
even
hard.
I changed up the cake recipe. Like I just, I had gone back to the drawing board on my like white cake. Like, I was like, okay, forget everything I've ever done before. We're gonna start all over. I mean, it was really rough. I was baking a 5-inch pan in a water bath, like it was a cheesecake, trying to get it to bake evenly. Like it was, I got special heating cores. Like, it was, it was a nightmare. But, for all of the things, like that was the irony of the CEPC for me, was that the thing that I do all the time, 15 times a week, was the thing that was going to give me a hard time, because I had to do it somebody else's method, which is not the way that I normally do it. Go figure.
Can't hear you.
Is he talking?
That's a perfect jump off point for me. Sorry, I had my microphone muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can hear you now.
Just like in the old days with the cell phone. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me running? Okay, so that's a great jumping point though, right? Because when I approached you about presenting here, I wanted to talk about the approach that you took and how you had to develop an entirely new process of understanding your product at a completely different level in order to get a product that had the qualities that you were looking for in your restaurant the way that you do. And to me, that requires an intention of mastering a product, right? It's very much so, to me, the process that you just described about going through the torment of gallons and gallons and gallons of cake batter and baking cakes and baking it in a water bath. And, those are the things that teach you the inside and the out of failure, what it can do, what you can't do. And I'm willing to bet that you also picked up some things to make a better cake along the way. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yeah, definitely.
And so for that particular reason, I that ties in beautifully to everything else that you're talking about, of understanding that you have a completely different product that's going to react differently than anybody knows. And the only way to really take that product to a whole different level is going to take understanding that product on a level that nobody else understands it. And since you created it, who better to do that than you? It's your baby. You can take it as far as you want to go with it. And I feel like that in and of itself is that aspect of mastery that is so relevant to me in what you do. And it's very obvious to me from an outside perspective. And, I know looking at your business from the inside perspective, I understand that you know the business that you have, but from the outside, you can see the work that you've put in, and I'm glad that you've been able to share with us some of those steps along the way that have gotten you to where you have with your business.
Well, it's been a pleasure for both of us to to watch the summit today, and then to be a part of one of the sessions. Great, great lineup of presenters that you've had today, and we're just happy to be a part of it.
Be able to share a little bit of what we've learned along the way, and maybe somebody won't make the same mistakes we've made, and or maybe they'll take some of the things we've learned and make it better as well.
Well, to me, people talk about classical cooking, and people disregard classical cooking as though classical cooking has all been done. And I don't think it has. I think there's a lot of classical cooking that we've lost. I'm not getting on that soapbox right now. But I think that you prove that there are more than ample opportunities for new areas of mastery, for a new area of product that can use that touch of excellence, right? When your standards are edible and gluten-free, you get a very different result than if your standards are, it needs to be 100% gluten-free, but it also needs to be clearly not gluten-free.
Right. Needs to be tricky. Yeah.
Well, in the first one, the standard doesn't even include good, edible, taste.
No, not even a little bit.
Edible doesn't explain much.
Right.
And that's depressing.
It is. Yeah.
And then to go to restaurants and know that they probably open the little package of most gluten-free things and stuff it in the same toaster that everything else goes into. A whole nother conversation and altogether. But, there's room for that level of mastery. If the intention is there, if you want to seek out the opportunity, the market is looking for those products. And that is why I couldn't agree with you more. You have an entirely market shifting product. And the gluten-free industry is totally right for an amazing product. And anybody out there who's looking to upgrade your pancakes, it's one of the best pancakes that I've made in a very long time, the gluten-free pancake mix. And it's crazy. And that is not to be taken lightly. And I would even argue that if you use the gluten-free pancake mix for most anybody who eats pancakes, the majority of people wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And you could not deal with the nonsense of having two separate pancake mixes.
Right. Well, and what we noticed along the way was that there's a lot of products out there that, I guess the sciencey part of R&D on the gluten-free side of things, there's some benefits to using gluten-free products. Like for one, there's no gluten. So, like the biscuits, we can roll out all of the biscuit mix into biscuits. We don't have to, sort of stop at the second rollout because they don't get tough. If anything, we sort of experience a little bit of an opposite effect where, the scraps being rolled back together, it almost creates like a lamination. And so, use up all of the biscuit mix into biscuits and not, have to worry about them being tough or little hockey pucks or anything at the end of your rollout. Similarly to that, pie crusts and things of that nature don't, if you're using the right flour, they don't get tough either, in rolling those things out. Pancakes and waffles are another great example because if you're using a flour that has too high of a gluten content and you're making regular pancakes or waffles, you'll activate the gluten in your flour and all of a sudden you've got a really dense, heavy product or something that's got too much stretch, and you get, Frisbees instead of pancakes. So, there's a lot of actual benefits other than, not making people sick, to using a gluten-free product.
Well, and can you, I don't have your YouTube right in front of me. Can you tell me the name of your YouTube channel? That way, anybody who might want to dabble can go check out your YouTube channel, watch you make biscuits.
It is Behind the Lime, Lime.
All one word or?
That is a great question.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Cool.
But,
Behind the Lime. I love it.
Correct.
And there's a bunch of videos on there. The more recent ones are the ones that are using our mixes. We are still continually adding to those. But in the biscuit video in particular, I go into a lot more of the details behind like why this works and what to look for and, what to not be afraid of. So, like I said, for me, the learning, I started with the protein breakdown of wheat flour and finding out, that wheat contains, different types of proteins and the gluten and the gliadin and like, what those do and what percentage that is in a standard, wheat flour versus a bread flour or a cake flour, and, trying to duplicate my protein content. For me in the beginning, it seemed like, well, if it's missing the, a part of the protein, we'll just, find higher protein content flours and we'll just swap that out that way. But it's not that you're missing the protein, it's that you're missing what the protein does when it reacts with water. So, it, like from the science background of it, there's a little bit of that in our YouTube videos. And I think, we'll continue to kind of upgrade that part of it as well to add a little bit more of that information for people that are interested in the why behind some of, why the mixes work the way that they work. But, we've messed with it long enough to know sort of use this for that and don't use that for this. And that kind of goes back to your question about why all the different mixes.
Why all the different mixes, yeah.
Yeah, the bread mix is ready to go. It's like just add water and egg whites. And the purpose behind that is, I wanted it to be as easy as possible for people. I wanted them to have success at home. I think a lot of times, and this is a rabbit trail that I'm not going to go all the way down, but I think a lot of times in culinary and in baking especially, you've got your perceived experts and they want to remain the perceived expert, and so they don't want to share their information, not in full anyway. And so I've had so many people come to me and say, I tried your stuff and it actually worked, and like they're shocked that the instructions are correct and that the ingredients that I tell them to add are, in the right percentages and in the right quantities. And that's, I guess that's sad.
Disappointing, but that's the world we're in. Yeah.
That's the world we're in, where they're not going to give you their actual recipe that they used when they created the photo. They're going to give you, some crap recipe that they know isn't going to produce the same results because they want you to keep trying again or to be, bowing at the, the throne of this online blog baker or whatever, like to, they're so good at this. Look what they made. And this is when I tried it. This is what I got. And, that's not our, that's not our MO at all. Like, we actually use the same products that are in the mixes. So it's, if I'm making biscuits, your biscuits are going to turn out the same way if you do the same things. And, I'm more concerned with people having success using our product and wanting to purchase it forever than I am in making a product that looks really good when I do it and that nobody else can duplicate.
Useless food at its finest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. That's amazing. So your mixes are all available online on your website, right? thedottedlime.com?
Yep.
Correct.
Okay. You have a biscuit mix, a pancake mix, your bread mix. What else? What am I missing?
All-purpose.
The all-purpose. The sugar cookie, right? The crepe?
There's crepe mix. There's a chocolate chip cookie mix, a chocolate cake mix. What am I forgetting? Did we do AP? Muffin mix.
Muffin mix. The muffin mix is really good too.
Yeah. So we're just, trying to put, I don't know, for me, the thing that was so offensive when I had to go gluten-free is that there were things that I missed, things that were like comfort foods. And, those are things that you share with others. Like you bake cookies with your kids, you take muffins to Muffins with Mom at kindergarten. Like there's all of that's a thing. Donuts with Dad, muffins with Mom.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
I never did that.
It's a thing. So, like I want people to be able to still experience events in their life that revolve around food, regardless of what they can or can't eat. And so a lot of the mixes are based on those types of things that are so hard to find gluten-free. good gluten-free. So, if there's another product out there, we may add another mix later on down the road. There's some other things that I've been thinking about adding to our product line. Cornbread muffins is one that I think would make a really easy mix and something very attainable, for people to make at home in several different ways. We recently did a pizza night. We had a snow day here, and we decided to go over to the restaurant and open up because nothing else in town was open, and we made pizza. And the pizza crust that I made was a hybrid of our panzino dough and our bread mix. And it seemed to be the right mixture of both items. And so I can, totally come up with a mix that would be a pizza crust. So, just kind of trying to like take the things that I like to make and the things that I think people want to make at home or in a restaurant setting and package it up in a way that makes it so easy that it doesn't cause any additional stress on the prep side in the restaurant, and it doesn't require 47 different ingredients for the home baker.
Any thoughts on heading down the path of like puff pastry? Is that something that's possible, or
Yeah,
for like the
right. I do a really good pie crust, and I do I dabble in croissants, and croissants are kind of the holy grail of gluten-free baking. And I hear the croissant thing from people about once a month. Would you ever make croissants? Would you ever make croissants? And I'm like, no, because of Instagram. And the thing with Instagram croissants are just heartbreaking to me. Like I look at them and I'm like, that's like 100% gluten right there. Like there's not even any starch in that flour. It's just gluten. But like you just look at it and I just think, dang it. Like
The answer is yes.
the short answer.
That will be coming.
I really want to do those things. It requires a lot of concentration and a lot of not interrupted time for me to think through, what do I already know? What do I need to know? What am I missing? And, what's my starting point for R&D on this product?
Yeah.
What was your word, Gerald? My first draft.
Yeah, your first draft. Exactly. Your first iteration.
Right.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting. I asked that question because there's so much chemically that goes on inside of a croissant, and for being such a simple thing, it's so sophisticated to have a great outcome. And it's I don't know. I've never thought to ask that question, but I feel like if anybody could do it, you could. So. Yeah.
That's what they keep telling me. That's what I keep hearing.
Just basically need to give her 2 weeks off to
2 weeks off with no one around.
and a dough sheeter.
And a dough sheeter.
So.
But yeah, we've thought about. I think about the croissant thing all the time. Like you'd ask my staff in the bakery how much I talk about it, because I just I audibly brainstorm at them about things.
At them. Nice. It's pretty chef of you. It's pretty chef of you.
And then what if we did this? And and I talk really fast, and they just kind of stand there rolling out panzinos, kind of, glancing at each other like, are we supposed to answer? But it helps me to be able to like verbally process an idea. So
you'll get it eventually, I'm sure.
Yeah, eventually. I'll send you a picture.
Oh, perfect. Chrissy, Paul, thank you so much for spending as much time as you have with me, and I know I can speak on behalf of the community. I can definitely really speak on behalf of the community. That it's been such a pleasure to hear you talk, and I really love what you do. I hope that's obvious, and I want more people to know about the good things that you do. So
thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Check out
Thank you
Paul
so much.
and Chrissy at thedottedlime.com.
Thanks.
Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Night.
I'm supposed to click this.
Ladies and gentlemen, That was Paul and Chrissy Jensen. I hope you enjoyed that presentation as much as I did. I cannot express that it is not an overstatement to say that their products are fantastic, period. And that they just happen to be gluten free. I wouldn't say that if I didn't mean that, because I find most gluten free products to be disgusting, awful, gritty, terrible, all the things that they described. More importantly, what I'd like for you to take away from that conversation is, anything is really possible if you put your time, energy, and your purpose to it. Paul and Chrissy had no choice but to figure out a way. They found a way, but then their standard allowed them to make the decisions that they needed to make their product fantastic.